Gabby knew something was wrong the moment her father's house came into view. The windows were dark. Not the quiet dark of people asleep. The hollow dark of a place emptied too fast, like breath sucked out of a room. Her father eased off the gas. "Dad," she murmured. "Why are the lights? Don't get out." The warning hit her harder than the darkness. Her father never used that voice. Not with her. Her fingers curled in her coat sleeve. "What's going on?" "Not yet," he said, knuckles whitening around the wheel. Then she saw them. 2 black SUVs parked sideways across the road, blocking the driveway like a barricade. No logos. No plates she could see. Just matte metal and men who didn't bother pretending they belonged there. They stood in her grandmother's yard as if they'd already bought it. One lounged against the fence. Another smoked lazily, the ember flaring each time he dragged in air, eyes tracking the truck with the slow confidence of someone who expected it. Gabby's pulse kicked up into her throat. "Dad, who are they?" He didn't answer. The truck rolled closer anyway, gravel crunching under the tires like bones. One of the men lifted his head. His smile was small, sharp, knowing, like he'd been waiting specifically for her. Cold slid down her spine, slow and deliberate. "Dad, why are they on our land?" Her father swallowed hard. She heard it. "Because someone powerful wants it." "And," she whispered, "and people like us don't get to say no." Her chest tightened until it hurt. "Then why are we stopping?" "We're not." He jerked the wheel sharply, turning away from the house, from the men, from the life she'd grown up in. The truck sped down the road, leaving the darkness behind, but not the fear. "Then where are we going?" she asked, voice barely steady. Her father hesitated. Just long enough for her stomach to drop. "To the only man who might stop this." The gravel screamed beneath the tires. It was a small sound. Sharp. Wrong. Out of place against the manicured silence of the estate. Gabby felt it in her teeth as her father's rusted pickup crawled forward, the headlights washing over limestone columns so tall they seemed to pierce the sky. The driveway curved like a deliberate path, meant to slow you down, meant to make you feel every second of your approach. Her father's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They were good hands. Scarred. Calloused. The hands of a man who had spent 40 years on a factory floor, who had taught her that honest work meant safety, and that safety meant distance, from places like this. Now those same hands were shaking. "I swore I'd never bring you back here," he said, his voice rough, like it had been dragged up from somewhere deep and buried. He didn't look at her. He couldn't. "I told myself I'd rather die first." The iron gates ahead of them rose out of the darkness, massive, black, unmistakable. No guards visible. No warning signs. Just steel and certainty. Locals called it Soul on the Hill, the colossal estate of the Choi family. "They've taken everything else," he went on, quieter now. "The councilman. The police. The courts. They took the house. They froze the accounts. They're coming for the land next." The land. Her grandmother's land. Red clay and stubborn trees and memories rooted so deep they couldn't be sold, only stolen. "They call it renewal," he said bitterly. "But it's a lie. Always was." The gates began to move. Not with a groan. Not with resistance. They opened with a silent, hydraulic hiss, smooth, controlled, inevitable. Gabby's breath caught. She'd been 16 the last time she'd seen this driveway. 16 and in love. 16 and foolish enough to believe that feelings could survive secrets, that boys didn't grow into monsters when given enough time and power. That night, her father had packed her suitcase himself. No explanation. No goodbye. New York by morning. A new school. A new life. And a rule that had never been spoken out loud, but had shaped every year since. Never come back here. "I didn't know where else to go," her father said, his voice breaking at last. "The only thing that can stop a shark is a monster." The truck rolled forward. The gates closed behind them. Gabby didn't turn around. She already knew what she'd see, no way out, no retreat, no path to return to untouched. She wasn't thinking about zoning laws or corrupt councilmen or the land her family was about to lose. She was thinking about the boy who had kissed her under the bleachers, all soft eyes and quiet promises. And the man who owned this hill now. They called him the architect of shadows. The man who didn't build with concrete alone, but with people, systems, and fear. The man who had redesigned Atlanta from behind glass walls and silence. The man her father had sworn was poison. She knew the boy was gone. The only question left was whether the man waiting inside would let her walk out alive. The pickup slowed to a stop at the base of the estate. Lights flared on above them. Somewhere deep inside the mansion, something had noticed their arrival. The first thing Gabby noticed when they stepped inside was the cold. Not the temperature. Atlanta didn't know how to do true cold, but the kind that lived in stone and money. It pressed into her skin the moment the glass doors sealed behind them, as if the mansion itself had inhaled and decided she didn't belong. The lobby of Soul on the Hill was a cathedral built for silence. Marble floors gleamed like a still lake. Limestone walls rose high enough to swallow voices. A chandelier hung above them like a frozen storm, each crystal drop catching the light and throwing it back with surgical precision. There were no family photos. No warmth. No evidence of life. Only power. And men. They stood at careful distances, charcoal suits, neat haircuts, hands folded in front of them like they were part of the architecture. No visible guns. No visible threats. But Gabby felt the weight of their attention the way she felt the weight of gravity. Her father's boots scuffed softly against the floor. The sound echoed. He flinched at the echo like the building had slapped him. A desk sat at the far end of the lobby, long dark wood, polished to a mirror shine. Behind it, a man in a black suit looked up with eyes that held no curiosity, only calculation. He didn't smile. He didn't greet them. He didn't ask if they needed help. He already knew why they were here. Gabby's father cleared his throat, shoulders squared in a way that used to mean he could face anything. "We're here to see Choi Dae-hyun." The man's gaze didn't move to her father's face. It went to Gabby instead, like she was the real message being delivered. His eyes took her in quickly, her coat, her hands, the way she stood half a step behind her father out of habit. Then his gaze flicked to a small earpiece. He touched it once. A pause. Then, calm as a metronome, he said, "Mr. Choi is unavailable." Gabby felt her father's body tense beside her. "Unavailable," he repeated, the words scraping. Tell him this is about the land. About the councilman." The man blinked once. "Mr. Choi is aware." That, more than the refusal, hit like a shove. "He knows. Of course he knows." The receptionist's eyes slid back to Gabby. "He requested that you wait." Her father's jaw flexed. "We're not here to wait," the man repeated politely. But his politeness wasn't softness. It was a blade with a clean edge. Then he gestured, not toward the desk, not toward a private room. Toward a long bench made of pale stone along the wall, beneath a piece of art that looked like nothing at all. A smear of black on white, framed like it mattered. A place for visitors. A place for people who didn't own the air they breathed. Her father didn't move. Gabby saw the fight in him, the instinct to protect her from being treated like an inconvenience. She saw the old pride flaring, blue collar, honest, stubborn. And she saw the fear too. Because he hadn't brought her here for pride. He'd brought her here because pride didn't beat sharks. Gabby touched his arm lightly. "Dad," she murmured. He looked at her, really looked, and something in his expression tightened. Like he hated that she was seeing him like this. Like he hated that he'd dragged her back to the one place he'd promised she'd never see again. He swallowed, hard, and sat. The bench was cold even through fabric. A suit-clad man appeared from nowhere, standing a few steps behind them, silent as a shadow. Not a guard exactly, more like a reminder. "You are being watched." Minutes passed. Then more. Time stretched thin, pulled taut by humiliation. Gabby tried to focus on her breathing, tried to keep her heartbeat from climbing her throat. But the lobby didn't allow comfort. Every inhale felt too loud. Every swallow felt noticeable. Her father stared straight ahead, refusing to look around. A man determined not to be impressed by the wealth surrounding him. But Gabby wasn't like him. She couldn't pretend the building didn't affect her. Because she remembered. 15 years ago, she'd stood at these very doors in a borrowed dress, her hand in Dae-hyun's, heart pounding with teenage certainty. She'd been dazzled back then, by the scale, by the rumor, by the boy who lived inside all of it like he didn't even notice. He'd been quiet even then. Controlled. A little too still for someone his age. But his eyes had been soft when they looked at her. Now she couldn't imagine softness surviving in a place like this. A soft chime sounded somewhere behind the desk. The receptionist straightened. Another man approached them, tall, broad, dressed in charcoal with a kind of ease that made the fabric look like it had been sewn onto his body. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. The air around him felt different, more charged, more alert. Gabby Wilson, he said. Her name in a stranger's mouth was wrong. Too intimate. Too precise. Yes, she answered, lifting her chin. His gaze skimmed her face once, then moved away, as if she were a package he'd already verified. This way. Her father stood immediately. She's not going anywhere alone. The man's eyes went to her father, and for the first time, a hint of expression appeared, cool amusement. Mr. Choi requested her, he said calmly. Not you. Her father's nostrils flared. I'm not leaving my daughter, it's okay, Gabby said softly, before her father could ignite fully. She turned to him, lowering her voice. He's not going to hurt me. Not here. Her father's eyes searched her face, desperate. You don't know what he is now. Gabby swallowed. Because she did know. Or at least, she knew what people said. Architect of shadows. The heir who didn't just inherit the syndicate, he rebuilt it. The man who didn't need to shout or threaten because his silence did it for him. But she also knew what she used to know. A boy who had waited after practice with a water bottle and a half-smile, as if the world couldn't touch him when she was near. That boy was gone. Still, something inside her refused to believe he'd become a monster who'd harm her. Not her. She squeezed her father's hand once. I'll be right back. Her father didn't let go immediately. His grip tightened like a plea. Then he released her with the reluctance of a man stepping away from the edge of a cliff. The suited man turned and led her across the lobby, past a hallway that seemed to swallow light. Their footsteps were quiet, but every step felt like a drumbeat in her bones. They passed through a security door that opened with a soft click. Another hallway. Another door. The estate unfolded like a maze designed to confuse anyone who didn't belong. And with each turn, Gabby felt her old life peeling away. New York, busy streets, careful choices, until there was nothing left but the heartbeat of what she'd come here for. They entered a private elevator. No buttons inside, only a small panel that lit up when the escort pressed a code. The doors slid shut. The elevator began to rise. Gabby stared at her reflection in the mirrored wall, brown eyes wide, lips parted slightly, hair tucked behind one ear like she used to do when she was trying not to look nervous. She didn't look like someone who belonged in this world. She looked like someone who could be broken by it. The elevator stopped with barely a sound. The doors opened onto a corridor that smelled faintly of cedar and something sharper, ozone maybe, from electronics humming invisibly behind walls. They walked to a double door, dark wood, sleek handle, no sign, no label. The escort didn't knock. He simply opened it. And stepped aside. Gabby walked in alone. The office was not an office. It was a throne room pretending to be modern. Floor-to-ceiling glass stretched across the entire far wall, revealing Atlanta in full, glittering, sprawling, alive. The skyline looked close enough to touch, as if the man in this room had reached out and rearranged the city with his hands. A massive desk sat in the center, black and minimal. Behind it, a single chair. And behind that chair him. Choi Dae-hyun rose slowly. Not in greeting. In acknowledgement. He was taller than she remembered. Or maybe she was smaller than she'd been at 16. Back then, he'd already been lean and athletic, a track runner's build, fast and precise. Now he was built. Broad shoulders beneath a perfectly fitted black shirt. Forearms corded with muscle. Tattoos creeping up his neck and disappearing under his collar, hinted again along his wrists where the sleeves ended. His face had sharpened, too. The boyish softness stripped away, replaced by something carved and dangerous, high cheekbones, a jaw that looked like it had been forged under pressure. His hair was darker, shorter, styled in a way that looked effortless but was clearly intentional. And his eyes, God. His eyes were the same shape as before, but the warmth was gone. What remained was control. A steady, heavy gaze that landed on her like a hand, firm, claiming, unapologetic. Gobby's mouth went dry. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at her, and the silence stretched until it became its own language. Then quietly, he said her name. Gabby. Her chest tightened. It was worse than hearing it from the receptionist. Worse than hearing it from her father. Because Daehyun didn't say it like a memory. He said it like a possession. She forced her voice to work. Daehyun. A flicker, so brief she almost missed it, passed across his face. Not softness. Recognition. Then it disappeared behind stone. Sit. It wasn't a request. Gabby moved to the chair in front of his desk, but she didn't sit immediately. Some stubborn part of her refused to fold too quickly. Daehyun watched her, still as a statue. Waiting. Gabby sat. The leather was cold beneath her palms. He remained standing for a beat longer, his gaze fixed on her face like he was measuring distances, between her eyes and her mouth, between who she was and who she used to be. Then he sat down across from her with the slow ease of a man who never rushes. Your father, he said, voice low, is waiting downstairs. I know. You left him there. Her stomach tightened. You made him wait. Daehyun's gaze didn't shift. Yes. The bluntness of it hit her. No apology. No justification. Just yes. Gabby held his stare anyway. He didn't want to come here. And yet, Daehyun murmured he did. A pause. And he brought you. Gabby's fingers curled lightly on her lap. We don't have a choice. Daehyun leaned back slightly, the chair barely creaking under him. Everyone has a choice. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It filled the room anyway. Gabby forced herself to breathe. The councilman, Park, Daehyun said smoothly. Gabby blinked. Yes. Councilman Park. Daehyun's eyes were steady. Go on. She swallowed. He's trying to force my family off our land. He says it's renewal, but it's a front, Daehyun finished, as if bored. For a rival group that wants a clean corridor into the city. Gabby's pulse stuttered. You already know. I know. He leaned forward slightly, forearms on the desk. But I want to hear how you say it. Heat crept up her neck, sharp and unwelcome. He was watching her mouth. She kept talking anyway, voice steadier now. They've frozen our accounts. The courts won't hear us. The police won't help. Park is untouchable. Daehyun's gaze flicked, just once, to the skyline behind her reflection in the glass. No one is untouchable. Gabby hesitated. We need time. We need leverage. We need someone who, she stopped herself before she said it out loud. Someone who plays dirty. Daehyun's mouth twitched, not a smile. Something colder. Say it, he murmured. Gabby's throat tightened. We need you. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive. Daehyun held her gaze like he could pin her in place with it. And what, he asked softly, do I get? Gabby's stomach dropped. She tried to keep her voice even. I'm not asking for charity. His eyes narrowed slightly. Good. Gabby leaned forward a fraction, palms pressing into her knees. I'm asking as someone who knew you. Before everything. I'm asking as what? He interrupted, voice still calm but now edged. A friend. Gabby froze. Daehyun's gaze sharpened, finally cracking enough to reveal something underneath. Old hurt, long cured into cruelty. Friends don't disappear in the middle of the night, he said, each word clipped and precise. Friends don't leave without a note. Without a call. Without a goodbye. Gabby's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Because he was right. Because she had vanished. Because 16-year-old Gabby had been dragged away in a storm of fear and moral panic, and she hadn't fought hard enough to stay. Daehyun watched her swallow her silence. Then he spoke again, quieter now, and somehow more dangerous. I looked for you. Gabby's breath caught. His eyes didn't blink. For a long time. Her chest ached with it. I didn't have a choice. Daehyun tilted his head slightly, considering her like a puzzle that no longer fit. You always had a choice. He let the words settle, heavy as a verdict. Then, as if the past was merely a file he'd closed, he said, you came here for help. Yes. And you came here with your father. Yes. And you came here, he continued smoothly, thinking you would ask and I would give. Gabby felt exposed, stripped down to motive. What do you want from me? Daehyun's gaze dropped for the briefest second, down to her hands, to the curve of her wrist, to the soft pulse point there. Then back to her eyes. I'll consider it, he said. Hope flared in her chest, small, foolish, immediate. But then he added in the same calm tone, but it won't be free. Gobby's hope turned sharp, wary. What does that mean? Daehyun leaned back, slow, deliberate. It means the councilman is not your only problem. Gabby frowned. What, it means, he said, voice low, that your family's land is already being circled. And the men circling it aren't patient. Her heart thudded. You're saying, I'm saying you're late. His eyes held hers. And you're lucky you came to me first. Daehyun rose slowly from his chair and walked around the desk, stopping close enough that his shadow covered her. He didn't touch her. But his presence did. A heat without contact. A pressure that made her lungs forget their job. He leaned down slightly, his voice near her ear, low, controlled, devastating. I'll help you, he murmured. But you're going to pay attention this time. Gobby's throat tightened. What are you saying? Daehyun's gaze held hers, unwavering. I'm saying, he said, you don't leave again. Gobby's heart pounded so hard it hurt. His voice was almost calm. Almost. I'll consider helping, he repeated, as if sealing the first stone of a new foundation. But you need to understand something before you beg me for anything else. He paused, letting the silence sharpen. Then he delivered the line like a door locking, this isn't a request anymore. And Gabby, sitting in front of the man she once loved, finally understood the shape of the labyrinth she'd walked into. Because the gates had closed behind her. And Choi Daehyun had just decided she belonged inside. The city bled into night outside the glass wall, lights flickering on one by one like a living circuit board. From this height, Atlanta looked orderly, manageable, as if chaos only existed at street level, far below the man who owned the view. Gabby sat very still. Choi Daehyun remained standing near the window, his back to her now, hands loosely clasped behind him. The posture wasn't casual. It was deliberate. He knew exactly what it did, how it framed his broad shoulders, how the city bowed outward beneath his silhouette. Control wasn't something he wore. It was something he engineered. He turned then, slowly, like a door closing. Tell me, he said, walking back toward the desk, how long has he been circling your family's land? Gabby hesitated. 6 months. Maybe longer. Daehyun nodded once, as if confirming a calculation. He needed time to clean the permits. Move money. Make it look legitimate. She frowned. You're saying, I'm saying, he interrupted gently, that this was never about your land's value. It's about location. Access. What runs beneath it. Gobby's heart skipped. Beneath it. His gaze sharpened, assessing how much she could handle. Infrastructure, he said. Transit routes. Fiber. Utilities. Whoever controls that corridor controls half the city's logistics flow. Her stomach tightened. And the rival gang? They need a clean channel, he said. Your family's land sits right in the middle of it. Gabby leaned back in the chair, breath shallow. So Park is just a mouthpiece, Daehyun confirmed. Cheap. Corruptible. Replaceable. Replaceable. The word echoed. And the law? She asked quietly. Daehyun's mouth curved, just barely. Is a tool. Like any other. She thought of her father, his faith in rules, in fairness, in doing things the right way. Thought of the letters they'd written, the appeals they'd filed. All of it useless. Gabby looked up at Daehyun. So what happens now? He studied her for a long moment, as if deciding which truth to give her first. Now, he said, you stop pretending this is a business meeting. Her pulse jumped. What do you mean? I mean, he continued unbothered, that if this were just about land, I would already have solved it. Gobby's brows drew together. You haven't. His eyes held hers. Not yet. A chill crept up her spine. Why? Daehyun walked back to his desk, picked up a crystal decanter, and poured amber liquid into 2 glasses with steady precision. Ice cracked softly, the sound sharp in the quiet. He slid one glass across the desk toward her. Gabby didn't touch it. Why wait? She pressed. Because, he said calmly, you hadn't come back. The words landed heavier than she expected. You were watching, she said. I was aware, he corrected. Gabby laughed softly, without humor. That's not an answer. Daehyun leaned forward, palms braced on the desk, bringing his face closer to hers, not invading, not touching. Just enough that his presence filled her space, undeniable. You disappeared, he said quietly. And then 12 years later, you walk back into my house asking for protection. Her chest tightened. I didn't disappear by choice. He tilted his head slightly. Did you try to find me? The question cut deeper than she expected. No, she admitted. I didn't. Silence stretched between them, taut as wire. Daehyun straightened and took a measured sip of his drink. When he spoke again, his voice was cool, controlled. Then you understand, he said, why this doesn't work like favors between old friends. Gabby nodded once. Then tell me what it is. His eyes darkened, something possessive flickering there before he smothered it. It's leverage, he said. And accountability. Her stomach twisted. Meaning. He set the glass down and looked at her like a man deciding where to place the first stone of a building that would never come down. Meaning I will dismantle Park, he said. Publicly. Legally. Completely. Her breath caught. I will expose his shell companies, and remove him from office within 72 hours. 72 hours. And the rival gang? She asked. They'll lose their permits. Their contractors. Their access. His voice remained calm. They'll bleed money until they retreat. Hope flared, bright, dangerous. And in exchange? She asked carefully. Daehyun's gaze dropped, just once, to the curve of her throat, the rise and fall of her breathing. In exchange, he said, you move into the estate. Tonight. The room seemed to tilt. Tonight? She repeated. Yes. She stopped herself. That's not reasonable. Daehyun's mouth curved slightly. Neither is expecting protection without proximity. She frowned. What does that even mean? It means the moment I move against them, he said, they will look for something to hurt back. Her stomach tightened. And you, he continued, eyes steady on hers, are visible. You are connected. And you are easy to reach. Gabby stood abruptly, the chair scraping softly behind her. You can't seriously expect me to be safe, he interrupted. She faltered. Because if you leave this house, he continued, voice still level, you become a target. Her heartbeat thundered. You said you could handle them. I can, he agreed. But distance creates risk. And I don't tolerate risk. Gabby shook her head. This isn't about safety. His eyes narrowed. Then what is it about? She forced herself to meet his gaze. Control. For a moment, just a moment, the air crackled. Then Daehyun exhaled slowly, like a man indulging patience. You mistake me, he said. I'm offering protection. At a cost, she shot back. Yes, he said evenly. Everything has a cost. Gobby's voice dropped. You want to keep me here. Daehyun didn't deny it. He stepped closer, stopping a careful distance away. I want you alive, he said. Untouched. Unused. The words sent a shiver down her spine. And if I refuse? His gaze hardened. Then you leave, and I solve the land issue anyway. Relief flickered. You would still help? Yes. She frowned. Then why? But, he continued, cutting her off, I will not protect you personally. And Park's allies will notice that. The implication was clear. They would test it. Gobby's hands curled into fists. You're forcing me. Daehyun's eyes softened, not with kindness, but with something dangerously close to honesty. No, he said quietly. I'm giving you the truth. Silence fell again. Gabby paced to the window, pressing her palm lightly against the glass. The city stretched beneath her, bright and indifferent. She thought of her father waiting downstairs. Of the land. Of the men who would not stop just because paperwork failed. And of the man behind her, silent, powerful, watching her like he already knew the outcome. If I stay, she said slowly, this isn't a cage. Dae-hyun didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was low, deliberate. It's a fortress. She turned. And when this is over? His gaze held hers. We'll discuss that when you're no longer in danger. Not if. When. Gabby laughed softly, breathless. You haven't changed. Something dark flickered in his eyes. I changed exactly as much as I needed to. She studied him, really studied him. The lines of restraint. The tension coiled beneath stillness. The man who had learned to replace emotion with structure. Where would I be staying? She asked. His gaze dipped, then rose again. The West Wing. Private. Secure. Locked. If you want it to be. The answer unsettled her more than a yes. Gabby crossed her arms, grounding herself. I'm not your possession. Dae-hyun stepped closer, close enough now that she could smell the clean, sharp scent of him. Wood, smoke, something expensive and dangerous. I know, he said quietly. Then softer than anything he'd said yet, I'm trying to keep you from becoming someone else's. Her breath hitched. The truth of it vibrated between them. Gabby looked down, then back up. You're not doing this out of kindness. No. You're not doing this because of the land. No. Her voice dropped. You're doing this because of me. Dae-hyun didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. Gabby closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with resolve she didn't fully feel. Fine, she said. I'll stay. His jaw tightened, just slightly. Tonight, she added, meeting his gaze. But this doesn't make me yours. Dae-hyun inclined his head, a fraction. No. She waited. And? She pressed. And it makes you safe. He stepped back, giving her space at last. Follow me. They walked through corridors that felt warmer now, less sterile. Or maybe that was her imagination adjusting to reality. He stopped outside a set of double doors and opened them. Her room was enormous. Glass, marble, soft lighting. A bed large enough to swallow her whole. A balcony overlooking the estate grounds. This is temporary, she said, more to herself than to him. Dae-hyun's gaze lingered on her profile. Everything is, he replied. She turned to him. My father will be informed you're safe, he said. He will not be harmed. Ever. The promise was absolute. Gabby nodded, tension easing just enough to hurt. Dae-hyun turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Gabby. Yes. His eyes met hers, dark, controlled, burning with something he refused to name. Then he was gone. The door closed with a soft click. Gabby stood alone in the quiet, heart pounding, the weight of her choice settling around her like stone. She hadn't been caged. She had been claimed. And somewhere deep in the estate, Choi Dae-hyun began to dismantle a city, for her. The estate never slept. It breathed. Gabby learned that within her first 24 hours inside Seoul on the hill, the low hum beneath the walls, the soft click of doors sealing and unsealing, the distant murmur of voices carried through hidden corridors. It wasn't noise. It was circulation. Like blood moving through a body designed to survive anything. And Dae-hyun was its heart. She watched him from the periphery at first. From the upper gallery that overlooked the command room, where glass walls revealed a quiet war being waged with screens instead of guns. Men spoke in short phrases. Names appeared and vanished. Maps shifted. Numbers froze, then collapsed. Dae-hyun stood at the center of it all, jacket discarded, black shirt stretched across his broad back, sleeves rolled just enough to expose inked skin and the coiled strength beneath it. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't hurry. He simply issued instructions, and the city responded. They've frozen Park's primary account, one of the men said. Good, Dae-hyun replied calmly. Release the secondary shell to the press. Let him scramble. Another voice, construction permits revoked. Environmental violations flagged. Dae-hyun nodded once. Shut down their contractors. Make it expensive to breathe. Gobby's stomach twisted, not with fear, but with the dawning realization of what power really looked like. Not loud. Not messy. Just inevitable. She should have been horrified. Instead, something else stirred in her chest, something dangerous and disorienting. Trust. Later, when the house quieted and the city settled into a false calm, she found him in the private corridor outside her room. He stood with one shoulder braced against the wall, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and lethal. "No," he said. "They don't negotiate. They retreat." A pause. "If they don't," he continued, "they'll learn." He ended the call and looked up. Their eyes met. The air shifted. "You're awake," he said. "I couldn't sleep." His gaze moved over her slowly, bare feet, silk robe tied too loosely at her waist, hair falling free down her back. Something dark flickered in his eyes before he masked it. "Come with me," he said. She followed without thinking. He led her back to her room. He gestured for her to sit. She did. He remained standing, hands loosely clasped behind him, watching her like he was weighing a decision he'd already made. "There was movement on the south perimeter," he said. "My men are handling it." Her breath caught. Movement. "A breach attempt," he clarified. "Unsuccessful." Gabby stepped closer without meaning to. "Was it not Park?" he said. "Not directly." "Not directly." The words landed like a cold hand on her spine. Daehyun watched her reaction closely. Too closely. "You're safe," he added, voice low. "No one got near the house." She nodded, but her pulse didn't slow. He exhaled once, controlled. "You're afraid." "I'm not, you are," he said quietly. "And you're trying not to show it." She looked away first. Not at the walls. Not at the doors. But at her phone, heavy in her hand. Because the fear wasn't about this house. It wasn't about the men outside its walls. It was about the one place she couldn't protect from here. Her father. She left because they finally found the one language she couldn't ignore. Not threats. Not money. Family. The message didn't hit her phone. It slipped through a crack Daehyun didn't control, an old college email she hadn't touched in years. One only her father ever used. No subject line. Just a single attachment. Her father's truck. Parked crooked at a petrol station she knew. Headlights on. Door open. Before she could breathe, a second email arrived. "We know where he goes when he doesn't want to be followed. We know where you go when you want to hide." Her pulse didn't speed up. It slowed, that awful sinking slow that meant panic had already taken over. She didn't tell the guards. She didn't tell her father. And she didn't tell Daehyun, because if she did, the city would burn, and her father would be standing in the middle of the fire. They sent a time. They sent a place. An old rail depot by the river, half abandoned, half condemned, fully perfect for disappearing someone. They didn't say come alone. They didn't need to. That night, she found Daehyun in the hall. "I need air," she said lightly. "I can't breathe in rooms tonight. I'll walk the gardens." Her smile held steady. Her hands didn't. He studied her face, that quiet surgical way he did when he sensed a lie forming behind her eyes. "Take a guard." She smiled. Soft. Practiced. Dangerous. "I'm not made of glass." He hesitated, then nodded once. "Stay where the lights can see you." She rose on her toes and kissed his cheek, quick, careless, reckless. "I will." She didn't. She walked past the gardens. Past the last camera. Past the invisible line where safety stopped pretending it was infinite. At the edge of the road, she raised her hand. A taxi slowed. Then stopped. She didn't check the plate. Didn't look at the driver. She got in anyway. "River," she said. "The old depot." The driver nodded and pulled away. Fear for herself had never been enough to move her. Fear for her father always was. As the city blurred past the window, her phone buzzed one last time. "You're being good, Gabby. He'll live longer this way." She closed her eyes. And kept going. The place they chose smelled like old rain and rust. Concrete ribs rose out of the dirt where a building had died halfway through being born. Wind moved through broken beams like breath through bones. The taxi rolled to a stop at the edge of the lot. End of the line, the driver said. Gabby paid him, stepped out, and shut the door behind her. The taxi pulled away, its tail lights shrinking until they vanished into the dark. She stood alone. Her heart didn't race. It went slow, heavy, like it already knew how this ended. "Dad?" she called. Only echoes answered. Then footsteps. Not rushed. Not hidden. Men stepped out of the shadows like they'd been standing there the whole time, just waiting for her eyes to catch up. "You came," one of them said, smiling. "Good girl." Her jaw tightened. "Where is my father?" "Safe," another said. "For now." That word again. For now. She took a step forward. "Let him go. You wanted me, I'm here." They laughed softly. One circled her like he was deciding where to touch first. "You think you're the trade? No. You're the message." Her pulse finally spiked. Hands reached. She moved back, and the lights died. Total black. Gunfire cracked the dark. Glass exploded somewhere. Men shouted. Someone screamed. Gabby dropped to her knees, hands over her head, heart trying to break out of her chest. Then footsteps, fast, sure, closing in. A body fell near her. Hard. Another. Silence rushed in where chaos had been. A hand found her arm. Strong. Familiar. "Look at me," Daehyun said. Her eyes flew open. He was there, blood on his knuckles, jaw tight with fury he was holding back with effort. "Gabby," he said. Her name sounded like a tether. "They had my father, I know," he said. "I found him. He's safe." Her legs folded. He caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her into his chest like he was afraid gravity itself might take her. She clutched his shirt, breath coming apart in her hands. They won't touch you," he said. "Not now. Not ever." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "How did you know?" His jaw tightened. "Because you kissed me goodbye like you didn't think you were coming back." Her throat burned. Behind him, his men moved through the wreckage, quiet, efficient, final. Bodies were dragged away. Phones were taken. Evidence erased like it had never breathed. Daehyun lifted her face with 2 fingers. "You never do this alone again," he said. Not angry. Not gentle. Absolute. She nodded, tears finally spilling. "I didn't want them to kill him." "They won't," he said. "And you're not dying for them either." He pulled her into him again, shielding her from what remained of the night. And for the first time since she'd stepped into the dark, she believed she was going to live through it. The first night after it was over, Gabby didn't leave. Not because she couldn't. Because she didn't want to. She told herself it was practical. That the city was still shifting, that people might still be angry, that waiting a few days made sense. But when she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, what she thought about wasn't danger. It was him. The way he had moved through that warehouse like a storm that knew where it was going. The way he had touched her face afterward, not like he owned her, but like he'd almost lost her. She told herself she was only staying until things settled. Then she told herself she'd leave after her father was safely home. Then she stopped setting dates. Daehyun never asked. He didn't hover. Didn't watch her like she might disappear. Which made staying feel less like a trap, and more like a choice she was pretending not to see. They fell into a rhythm that felt dangerous in how easy it was. Coffee in the mornings that she didn't make herself. Conversations that stretched too late. Looks that lasted a second longer than they should. They argued once, about nothing that mattered, and laughed about it 10 minutes later. Sometimes they went out into the city, restaurants, bars, quiet corners where no one looked twice at him, just to show her what his world could look like when it felt almost normal. Sometimes she caught him watching her like he was memorizing something he didn't trust to last. Once she said lightly, "I'll go home soon." He just nodded. "Whenever you want." That should have made her brave. Instead it made her stay. She told her father she needed more time. That she still felt shaken. That she wanted to be sure. It was a lie that tasted almost sweet. What she wanted to say was, "I don't want to leave him." But she wasn't ready to put that into words yet. She wanted more days where he reached for her without asking. More nights where nothing happened except wanting. Some nights they stood too close and didn't move. Some mornings she woke and forgot, for one dangerous second, that she had another life. He never pressed. Which made it harder not to choose him. Because the choice was always hers. And she was already making it, one just a little longer at a time. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday morning. Gabby saw it on a screen in the kitchen while coffee went cold beside her. Councilman Park's face, grey sweating, flashed across every channel. Reporters crowded him so tightly, he looked trapped inside their microphones. Shell companies, offshore accounts, bribes tied to zoning approvals. Park raised a hand, shaking. No comment, he said. No comment at this time. By noon, his offices were sealed. By evening, his allies were denying they'd ever known him. Gabby found Dae-hyun on the terrace, phone in hand, eyes calm like this was weather he'd predicted days ago. It's starting, she said. It started a long time ago, he replied. Today is just when people are allowed to see it. 2 days later, they showed Park being led out of his own mansion. Not in handcuffs yet. But already broken. He walked slowly, like every step hurt. His wife cried behind him. His neighbors watched from behind curtains that had once hidden their envy. When Park saw the cameras, he dropped to his knees. Not for God. For mercy. No one gave him any. The rival gang didn't fall in daylight. They vanished at night. One warehouse burned so cleanly it looked intentional. Another was found empty, doors open, money gone, men missing. Phones rang that no one answered. People stopped saying their name. Like it might summon them back. One evening Gabby asked, "Is it over?" Dae-hyun looked at the city for a long time before answering. "It's finished," he said. "It just hasn't realized it yet." 3 days later, the last of their leaders was found trying to cross state lines with a fake passport and no allies left to call. After that, the city went quiet in a new way. Not peaceful. But no longer hunted. Atlanta whispered a different truth now. The architect of shadows had reclaimed his city. And he had done it because one woman had walked into the dark and made him choose the light. Her father arrived without warning one morning. She heard his voice before she saw him, familiar, steady, the sound of a life that had always been hers. He pulled her into a hug that lingered longer than usual. "The land's safe," he told her. "It's done. You can come home now." She nodded, but her eyes moved across the room. Dae-hyun stood near the window, not intruding, not withdrawing, just giving her space the way he always did when the choice had to be hers. She turned back to her father. "I'm staying," she said quietly. He blinked. "Gabby, I walked away from him once," she whispered. "I won't do it again." Her father studied her face, not for fear, not for doubt, but for truth. Then he nodded. "I trust you," he said. "And I trust him." He hugged her again and left her standing in a life she had just chosen. Dae-hyun didn't move. Later that night, she found him on the balcony. The city stretched below them, all light and distance. Moonlight softened the sharp lines of his face, turning power into something almost gentle. "You're sure?" he said quietly. "Not a question. A recognition." She nodded. "You know what I am," he continued. "What my world is. I never blamed you for leaving before. And if you choose to leave again, I won't blame you now." She crossed the space between them. "I'm not leaving," she said softly. "I choose you." His breath hitched, barely, but she felt it. He lifted his hand and cupped her jaw, his forehead resting against hers. "Then I'm yours," he murmured. Their lips met slowly, unhurried, full of everything they hadn't said, of fear left behind, of choices finally owned. His hand slid to her waist, steady and warm, holding her there like the world had finally made sense. When they parted, neither of them moved right away. The city breathed below them. The night held them. Dae-hyun brushed his thumb once along her jaw, light enough to ask instead of take. She answered by stepping closer, by letting her hands settle against his chest like they'd always known where to go. "Come inside," he said quietly. Not a command. An invitation. She followed him through the quiet halls, past rooms she'd learned and spaces she hadn't yet claimed, until they reached his door. He paused there, giving her one last chance to turn away. She didn't. Inside, the world softened. Lamps instead of shadows. Silence instead of power. He pulled her close again, slower this time, like he was learning her all over. They kissed like people who weren't running anymore. Like people who had chosen to stay. When the door finally closed behind them, it wasn't with urgency, it was with certainty. And whatever the night held after that, it held it gently. 1 year later, the city breathed differently. Gabby stood at the edge of the new park, land that had once belonged to her grandmother, now returned to the community instead of stripped for profit, the late afternoon sun warming her shoulders as laughter drifted across the open green. Children ran along curved paths that followed the natural rise of the land, their voices bright and unburdened. Elderly neighbors sat beneath young trees, talking softly. A community center, glass and wood, open and welcoming, caught the light behind her like a promise kept. Her grandmother's land no longer felt haunted. It felt alive. She glanced down at the plaque near the entrance, the letters clean and simple. Her family's name. Not as a concession. Not as a compromise. As ownership, undeniable and permanent. Is this where you're hiding? A familiar voice murmured behind her. Gabby smiled before she turned. Choi Dae-hyun stood a few steps away, jacket draped over one arm, dark hair touched by sunlight instead of shadow. He looked different here, still powerful, still unmistakably dangerous, but softened by the open air, by the ease in his posture when he was with her. I wasn't hiding, she said. I was remembering. He came to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders brushed. His gaze followed hers across the park, the families, the quiet joy stitched into the land. This place used to be a battlefield, he said. And now it's a home, she replied. His eyes shifted to her face, unreadable for a moment. Then something gentler settled there. You changed the ending. She shook her head. We did. Her hand slid into his without thinking. It fit the way it always had, like a memory that knew where it belonged. A group of children ran past them, one nearly tripping before another caught his sleeve and pulled him upright, both of them laughing too hard to care. Gabby felt something warm and steady inside her, deeper than happiness. She turned to Dae-hyun. You know, she would have loved this. Your grandmother? She believed land remembered people, Gabby said softly. That it knew who protected it and who tried to steal it. He looked at the ground beneath their feet, then back at her. Then maybe it remembers you. She smiled at that. They walked together along the curved path, slow, unhurried, greeting neighbors who nodded at them like they belonged here, which they did. When they reached the center of the park, Dae-hyun stopped. He reached into his pocket and took out something small. Gabby blinked. What are you doing? Trust me, he said. He dropped to one knee, not dramatically, not for anyone else. Just for her. Her breath caught. This city knows me as many things, he said quietly. Most of them dark. But you chose me when you didn't have to. You stayed when you could have walked away again. He looked up at her. I don't want a life that doesn't have you in it. Not now. Not ever. Her eyes burned. I don't promise softness, he went on. But I promise truth. And loyalty. And every future I'm still alive to build. He opened the small box. Inside, a ring. Simple, strong, unmistakably chosen. Gabby, he said, voice steady, come build it with me. She didn't hesitate. Yes, she said, laughing through tears. Yes. He stood, slipping the ring onto her finger with hands that had ended empires and now trembled for her. She pulled him into her, kissing him there in the middle of her grandmother's land, while the park breathed around them like it was blessing them both. And for the first time in a long time, the past didn't ache. It smiled.